At Rare Coins, we uncover the real value, the truth behind the hype, and the coins collectors would do anything to own. Welcome to Rare Coins. The 1970 Washington quarter is one of those coins that most people overlook in their pocket change, but collectors know it hides some incredible surprises. Let's break it down. In regular circulation, a 1970 quarter struck at either the Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco mints is made of a copper nickel-clad composition. These are the standard coins most people are familiar with, and in circulated condition, they're generally only worth 25 cents. But here's where things get interesting. Collectors aren't just after the ordinary 1970 quarter, they're chasing the rare varieties, mint errors, and special proofs that can bring huge premiums. The most famous and valuable example is the 1970 proof Washington quarter struck on a 1941 Canadian quarter. That's right, an incredible mint error where a Canadian coin was accidentally used as the planche. Because of this, the design of the Canadian coin is faintly visible underneath the U.S. quarter's design. This error is one of the most spectacular in modern U.S. coinage, and it sold for over $35,000 at auction. That's the kind of discovery that makes collectors dream of checking every quarter carefully. But that's not the only prize from 1970. The 1970 proof quarters themselves are sought after, especially those with deep cameo contrast, where the frosted devices stand out boldly against the mirrored background. In high grades certified by PCGS or NGC, these can bring $15 to $100 or more, with the absolute best perfect PR70 examples stretching into the thousands. The 1970 quarter also carries collector interest. While most are common, there are a few notable varieties, including doubled dies and repunched mint marks that sell for premiums. For example, a 1970 quarter with a strong doubled die obverse can fetch hundreds of dollars, depending on how bold the doubling is. Another fascinating collectible is the 1970 No-S proof quarter. In rare cases, proof coins were struck at San Francisco without the mint mark, leading to the famous No-S variety. If you were lucky enough to pull a No-S quarter from a proof set, you'd be holding a coin worth several $1,000s today. These are extremely rare and are considered modern treasures. When looking at standard 1970 quarters in uncirculated condition, prices also rise above face value. A bright, well-struck mint state 65, example of the 1970 can sell for $15 to $25, while the scarcer 1970 in MS 66 or better can bring $40 to $75. At the top end, flawless MS 67 quarters of this date have auctioned for over $2,000 since so few survived without bag marks or flaws. It's also important to put the 1970 quarter in historical context. This was a time when the United States was transitioning fully into clad coinage, with silver long gone from quarters after 1964. However, nostalgia for silver coins was strong, and many Americans were still hoarding pre-1965 quarters. This left more 1970 quarters in circulation than some earlier clad issues, but condition makes all the difference. The Washington quarter design itself, created by sculptor John Flanagan in 1932, was meant to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington. By 1970, the design had already been in place for nearly 40 years, and while many collectors called for changes, it remained a staple of American coinage until the state quarters program launched in 1999. That means the 1970 issue is part of the long, classic Washington quarter run, which collectors often complete as a set. Collectors who pursue these coins often focus on building complete sets of Washington quarters by date and mint mark. The 1970 issues, while common in circulated grades, become far tougher in high mint state or with proof varieties. Add in the famous Canadian planche error, and suddenly the 1970 quarters are elevated from pocket, changed to genuine numismatic treasures. So to sum it up, a regular 70 quarter in your change is worth face value. An uncirculated one might be worth a few dollars, but the right variety, a proof with deep cameo contrast, a high-end MS 67 example, or especially the legendary 1970 struck on a 1941 Canadian quarter, can bring thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. That's why collectors keep searching, carefully inspecting every coin, and holding out hope for the next big discovery. The 1970 Washington quarter reminds us that sometimes the most ordinary-looking coins can hide extraordinary stories, and that's what keeps the thrill of coin collecting alive. The 1966 Washington quarter might look like an ordinary piece of pocket change, but collectors know it's part of a very special era in U.S. coinage history. This quarter was struck right in the middle of one of the most dramatic changes in modern coinage, the complete shift away from silver into clad coinage. And because of that, the 1966 issue carries more significance than most people realize. Let's go back to the early 1960s. Before 1965, U.S. quarters were made of 90% silver and 10% copper. For decades, this had been the standard composition. But by the early 60s, silver prices began to rise, and Americans started hoarding silver coins. Suddenly, quarters, dimes, and half dollars made of silver were disappearing from circulation almost overnight. To keep coins in circulation, Congress authorized the Coinage Act of 1965, which eliminated silver from dimes and quarters, replacing them with a copper-nickel clad composition. The 1966 Washington quarter was one of only the second year of fully clad quarters, following the clad debut in 1965. This makes it historically important because it represents the full break with silver coinage. No silver quarters were struck for circulation in 1966, and every one of them was struck with the modern copper-nickel sandwich design, copper core with nickel outer layers. Another interesting detail, in 1966, the U.S. Mint suspended mint marks. That's right, none of the coins struck in 1965, 1966, or 1967 have mint marks. This was done intentionally to discourage collectors from hoarding certain mint-marked coins and making the coin shortage worse. That means every 1966 quarter looks the same, whether it was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. To collectors today, this creates a fascinating period where identifying where a coin came from is impossible just by looking. In terms of mintage, the mint struck a huge number of 1966 quarters, over 821 million pieces. Because of this, most circulated examples are worth just face value, 25 cents. However, condition is everything. In higher mint state grades, 1966 quarters are much tougher to find than later clad dates. Most coins entered circulation quickly, and because of the softer clad planchets used at the time, many coins show weak strikes, scratches, or dull luster. When you get into high mint state levels, MS65, MS66, and especially MS67, values climb dramatically. A typical MS65 1966 quarter might sell for $30 to $50, while an MS66 can bring $50 to $250. At the very top, in MS67 condition, these coins are extremely rare, and auction prices have reached $5,000 to $7,000 for the absolute best. That makes even a common-looking 1966 quarter worth checking if it has flawless surfaces and bright original luster. Collectors also chase the special SMS coins from 1966. Instead of proof sets, the U.S. Mint issued what are called special mint sets, SMS, from 1965 through 1967. These coins were struck with better quality than circulation coins, often with sharper detail and satiny or lightly mirrored surfaces, but not quite proof quality. The 1966 SMS quarter is very popular among collectors. Within the SMS issues, some coins display deep cameo (DKM), contrast frosty raised designs against mirrored fields. These are rare and highly desirable. A top-graded 1966 DKM quarter can bring thousands of dollars at auction, with some examples selling for $10,000 or more in perfect grades. These coins prove that even in a year of high mintage, quality and finish make all the difference. And then, of course, there are the mint errors. 1966 was a chaotic time at the mint, with so many coins being rushed into circulation to meet demand. As a result, a number of fascinating errors exist. You can find off-center strikes, double strikes, clipped planchets, and even rare double-die obverses and reverses. Some of these errors trade for hundreds of dollars, while the most dramatic can go for several thousand. One particularly famous class of errors is when a silver planchet was accidentally used. Though extremely rare, there are rumors of transitional wrong planchet errors where a 1966 quarter may have been struck on leftover silver stock. If verified, these would be worth tens of thousands of dollars, but they remain controversial and rarely seen. Historically, the 1966 quarter also captures the story of a nation in transition. Silver was gone, mint marks were gone, and the U.S. Mint was experimenting with SMS coins rather than traditional proofs. All of this makes the date a key part of the modern era. Collectors often build complete Washington quarter sets, and the 1966 coin is a must-have, common in circulated condition, but tough and rewarding in top grades or as part of a high-quality SMS set. So what's the takeaway? A circulated 1966 quarter is worth face value. An uncirculated one in MS-65 might get you 30, a flawless. MS-67 could be worth thousands. SMS coins are special, and DCAM examples can reach 5 figures. And if you happen to stumble across an error coin, you might just be sitting on a true modern rarity. The 1966 Washington quarter proves that even coins with enormous mintages can carry incredible value when you know what to look for. And that's exactly why collectors keep searching. The 1976 Washington quarter, bearing the double date 7/76/1976, is one of the most recognized and beloved coins in American numismatics. It was issued to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and it became part of one of the largest coinage programs in U.S. history. Unlike the standard Washington quarters, which show the familiar heraldic eagle reverse, the bicentennial quarter carries a completely unique design. On the obverse, you still have George Washington's profile, but the date is replaced with dual years, 1776-1976, to mark the bicentennial. On the reverse, instead of an eagle, there's a special design, a colonial drummer boy standing proudly, with a victory torch encircled by 13 stars to the side. This design was created by Jack L.R., who won the Mint's bicentennial design competition. These bicentennial quarters were struck in 1975 and 1976, but none of them carry the year 1975. That's right. Every quarter made during that 2-year period carries the double date, 1776-1976. This makes them especially memorable because no quarters exist with the single date, 1975. Now let's talk about types and mintages. The 1976 bicentennial quarter was produced in enormous numbers for circulation. Over 1.6 billion pieces were minted between Philadelphia and Denver. That makes them incredibly common in worn, circulated condition, where they're usually worth just face value, 25 cents. Millions of people save them as souvenirs, which is why you'll often still find them in jars, boxes, and old collections across the country. But here's where it gets interesting. Not all bicentennial quarters are created equal. The Mint also struck special collector versions. The most famous are the 40% silver bicentennial quarters, issued in both uncirculated and proof sets. These were sold directly to collectors, not released into circulation. Because of their silver content, they are worth much more than face value. A typical 40% silver bicentennial quarter is worth $4 to $8, and in pristine condition or as part of an original set, even more. There are also clad proofs and uncirculated collector issues struck with much higher quality than circulation strikes. A proof bicentennial quarter with deep cameo contrast can fetch $10 to $30 in average grades, but in the very top levels, PR70 deep cameo, these coins can bring several $1,000s at auction. Even circulation strikes can be valuable in high mint state grades. A standard 1976 quarter from Philadelphia or Denver is only worth face value in worn condition, but in MS-66 or MS-67, values jump dramatically. A high-grade MS-67 bicentennial quarter can sell for $500 to $1,000, and a top-pop MS-68 could bring $5,000 or more. Quality is everything. Collectors also hunt for error coins from this series. With such massive mintages, mistakes did happen. Off-center strikes, double strikes, broad strikes, and clipped planchets all exist for the 1976 quarter. Some double die obverses and reverses have also been reported, though they're not common. Depending on severity, bicentennial quarter errors can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. What really makes the 1976 bicentennial quarter special, though, is its cultural impact. It wasn't just a coin. It was part of America's bicentennial celebration, which included parades, fireworks, television specials, and nationwide festivities. Millions of Americans remember receiving one of these coins in change and setting it aside as a keepsake. For many, it was their first step into coin collecting. Today, the bicentennial quarter remains one of the most recognizable modern U.S. coins. It's often the first special coin that young collectors encounter, and because of the sheer number saved, they're affordable and accessible to everyone, while still offering huge value in the rarest conditions. To sum it up, a circulated bicentennial quarter is worth face value, 25 cents. A high-grade mint state example can be worth hundreds to thousands. The 40% silver versions are collectible and worth several dollars each. Proof and deep cameo examples can fetch big money in perfect grades. Error coins can command premium prices depending on rarity and condition. The 1976 bicentennial Washington quarter, with its double date 1776-1976, is more than just pocket change. It's a piece of history, a symbol of national pride, and a gateway coin that continues to inspire generations of collectors. The 1938D Jefferson Nickel is a fascinating coin, not only because it belongs to the very first year of the Jefferson Nickel series, but also because of its relatively low mintage and importance for collectors. In 1938, the United States Mint retired the long-running Buffalo nickel, which had been in circulation since 1913. The Buffalo design had become iconic, but after 25 years, the law allowed the mint to adopt a new design without Congress's approval. A public competition was held, and the winning design was created by Felix Schlag, a German-born sculptor. His design of Thomas Jefferson's portrait on the obverse and Jefferson's Monticello home on the reverse was chosen to usher in this new era of nickels. Now, among the 1938 nickels, there are 3 different mint marks: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver D; and San Francisco S. The 1938D stands out for its relatively small production. The Denver Mint struck just 5,376,000 coins, making it one of the lowest mintage nickels of the 20th century. For comparison, modern nickels are struck in the hundreds of millions, sometimes even billions in a single year. Because of that low mintage, the 1938D is often considered a semi-key date in the series. While not quite as famous as the 1939D or 1950D, the 1938D remains one of the toughest early Jeffersons to locate in higher grades. Let's talk about the design. On the obverse, you have a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, with the inscriptions "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the year 1938. On the reverse, you see Monticello, Jefferson's home in Virginia, along with the inscriptions "E Pluribus Unum," United States of America, and 5 cents. Below Monticello is the mint mark D for Denver. When it comes to circulation strikes, most 1938D nickels saw everyday use. That means in grades like fine or very fine. These coins are relatively affordable today, usually worth $3 to $7. In uncirculated grades, though, things get much more interesting. Collectors saved some rolls of these coins back in the late 1930s, but not nearly as many as for the Philadelphia issue. In MS-63 to MS-64, values typically range from $15 to $35. At MS-65, the coin jumps to $60 to $100, and at MS-66, you're looking at $200 to $300. Now here's where the Jefferson nickel market gets exciting. Full steps examples. Full steps, or FS, are coins where the steps on Monticello are completely visible and sharply struck. The Denver Mint in 1938 produced better strikes than San Francisco did, so full steps 1938D nickels are more available than some other early dates, but they're still in demand. A 1938D with 5 full steps in MS-66 can bring $400 to $600. In MS-67 full steps, prices can soar past $2,000, and some of the very finest examples have sold for even higher. Registry set collectors, those trying to build the absolute finest set of Jefferson Nickels, are especially aggressive in bidding on top-graded, full steps coins. It's also worth noting that 1938 was the transition year from the Buffalo nickel to the Jefferson nickel. That means collectors often seek both the 1938D Buffalo nickel and the 1938D Jefferson nickel as a pair, making the Jefferson even more popular among those building type sets. To recap the values clearly: circulated, fine to XF, $3, $7, MS63 to MS64, $15, $35, MS65, $60, $100, MS66, $200, $300, MS66, full steps, $400, $600, MS67, full steps, $2,000 plus. The 1938D Jefferson nickel is more than just a low mintage coin. It represents the very beginning of the Jefferson Nickel series, which has now run for over 85 years. Because it's the first year of issue, because of its relatively small mintage, and because of its demand in high grades with full steps, the 1938D continues to be one of the most collectible nickels in U.S. coinage history. The 1938D is in fact a first-year, low mintage treasure that every serious Jefferson nickel collector keeps on their want list. The 1939S Jefferson nickel is one of the most important and desirable coins in the entire early Jefferson nickel series. Even though the Jefferson design had only been introduced the year before, in 1938, the second year of the series already brought us some interesting challenges for collectors. The San Francisco Mint produced just 6,630,000 nickels in 1939. That mintage may sound large compared to rare 19th century coins, but for Jefferson nickels it's tiny. In fact, it's the second lowest mintage regular issue nickel of the entire series, only higher than the 1950D. Because of this, the 1939S has always been considered a semi-key date for collectors. Now let's talk about the coin itself. The design, created by Felix Schlag, features a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, with the inscriptions, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date. The reverse shows Jefferson's home, Monticello, along with E Pluribus Unum, United States of America, and the denomination 5 cents. The 1939S nickels were not heavily saved when they were issued. Back in the late 1930s, coin collecting was still largely focused on older series like Buffalo nickels and Indian cents. As a result, most 1939S nickels went straight into circulation, where they quickly picked up wear. This means finding high-grade, uncirculated examples today is surprisingly difficult, despite the coin being only about 85 years old. In circulated grades, a 1939S nickel might be worth $3 to $10, depending on condition. Even a fine or very fine example brings more than face value because of the low mintage. Once you get into mint state grades, the value jumps. In MS63 to MS64, the coin is typically valued between $40 and $75. In MS65, you're often looking at $150 to $250. And in MS66, the value can climb to $500 or more. With full steps designation, however, the 1939S becomes truly rare and highly sought after. Full steps nickels are those where the steps on Monticello are completely visible, without any weakness or breaks. For the 1939S, such coins are exceptionally hard to find because San Francisco strikes from this era were notoriously weak. An MS66 full steps 1939S can easily command $3,000 to $5,000, and the finest known pieces have sold for tens of thousands of dollars at auction. This is why registry set collectors, those trying to build the finest graded sets, pay such huge premiums for these coins. Another reason the 1939 nickels are fascinating is the reverse design change that occurred that year. In 1938, the reverse hub had shallow, mushy detail. In 1939, The mint re-engraved the reverse to show sharper steps and stronger lines on Monticello. Coins of 1939 come with either the reverse of 1938, the older, weaker style, or the reverse of 1940, the improved design. Most 1939s nickels feature the reverse of 1940, but examples with the earlier reverse of 1938 are scarcer and more desirable. This variety adds another layer of interest for collectors. To recap values clearly: circulated, fine XF, $3, $15. Mint state, MS63, MS64, $40, $75. MS65, $150, $250. MS66, $500 plus we. MS66, full steps, $3,000. $5,000 plus. Finest known full steps examples, $10,000 plus at auction. Collectors consider the 1939 SO nickel to be one of the top semi-key dates in the series, right alongside the 1939D and the famous 1950D. It's a coin that anchors early Jefferson Nickels collections and continues to attract strong demand, especially in high grades with full steps. So while at first glance the 1939S may look like just another old nickel, in reality it's a low mintage treasure with varieties, strike challenges, and a reputation that makes it one of the most important coins in the entire Jefferson Nickels series. The 1916 Mercury dime marks the very beginning of one of America's most beloved coin series. Officially called the Winged Liberty Head dime, it was designed by Adolph A. Weinman, the same artist who also designed the Walking Liberty half-dollar. Collectors nicknamed it the Mercury dime because Liberty's winged cap looks a lot like the Roman god Mercury. Now, 1916 is a particularly important year for this coin because it was the very first year of issue, and 3 different mints struck dimes: Philadelphia with no mint mark, Denver with the D mint mark, and San Francisco with the S mint mark. Among these, the 1916 D Mercury dime is one of the most famous rarities in all of U.S. coinage. Only 264,000 examples were struck at the Denver Mint, making it the lowest mintage of the entire series, and one of the lowest mintages for any 20th century U.S. coin. To put that into perspective, millions of dimes were struck in other years, but the 1916 D stands out as a true key date. Let's talk values. A heavily worn 1916 D Mercury dime graded good 4 can still sell for $1,000 to $2,000 in fine condition. You might be looking at $3,000 to $4,000 in very fine and extremely fine. Prices climb higher, often $5,000 to $8,000 when you get into the uncirculated range. Mint state 60 or better prices absolutely explode. An MS63 1916D Mercury dime can bring $15,000 to $25. Frozen MS65 values range from $40,000 to $70,000 depending on eye appeal. And the finest known examples, in grades like MS67 full bands, have sold at auction for well over $150,000 to $200,000. That puts it in the same league as the 1909 SVDB cent, the 1893 S Morgan dollar, and the 1914 D Lincoln cent as one of the true must-have key date coins. Now, the Philadelphia and San Francisco issues of 1916 are far more common. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 22 million coins, and San Francisco produced just over 10 million. These coins are still collectible, but you can find them in circulated grades for $10 to $50, and in mint state for a few $100s. They're popular as type coins, since they represent the very first year of the series. One important note for collectors: because the 1916 D is such a valuable coin, it is also one of the most counterfeited U.S. coins. A common scam is to take a 1916 Philadelphia dime which has no mint mark and add a fake D on the reverse. At first glance, these fakes can fool people, but experts know how to spot them by looking at the mint mark style, size, and position. The genuine 1916 D mint mark has a very specific placement, relative to the fasces on the reverse. Beyond rarity and value, the Mercury dime is admired for its artistry. The obverse shows liberty with a winged cap, symbolizing freedom of thought, while the reverse features a fasces, an ancient Roman symbol of authority, paired with an olive branch, representing strength and peace. This combination of classical imagery and modern design makes it one of the most beautiful coins ever struck by the U.S. Mint. Collectors also hunt for coins with strong full bands detail on the reverse, where the central bands of the fasces are fully separated and sharp. Full bands examples are significantly scarcer and command large premiums. For example, a 1916D, with full bands in mint state, can easily be double or triple the value of a similar coin without them. To put everything together, 1916 Philadelphia, common, affordable, good for typesets. 1916 is lower mintage than Philly, but still collectible at modest prices. 1916D, the crown jewel, with only 264,000 minted, and values from $1,000. In low grades to over $150, 000 plus, in top mint state full bands. The 1916 Mercury dime, especially the 1916D, is one of the legendary rarities of 20th century American numismatics. It's not just a coin, it's a symbol of the excitement of collecting, the hunt for rarity, and the beauty of early 20th century design. The year 1940 is an important one for Jefferson Nickels collectors. The series was still relatively new, having started only 2 years earlier in 1938. By 1940, the U.S. Mint was striking large numbers of these coins to keep up with demand, and they came from 3 different mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Let's break them down. The Philadelphia Mint struck more than 176 million nickels in 1940, making it the highest mintage of the year. Because of this, the 1940 Philadelphia nickel is considered common. In circulated grades, you can often find them for just face value or slightly above, maybe 25 cents to $1. In higher uncirculated grades, though, values increase. A 1940 in mint state 65 might bring $15 to $30, and examples with brilliant luster and sharp strikes can go higher. But where things get really interesting is with the double die obverse variety, listed as 1940 DDO001. On this variety, you can see strong doubling on the inscriptions "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." These are visible even to the naked eye if the coin is well preserved. A normal 1940 nickel might be worth a few dollars in mint condition, but a double die can bring $200 to $500 in mint state, and sometimes more for very high grades with strong doubling. This is one of the most popular early Jefferson Nickels varieties. Next, we have the 1940D nickel struck in Denver. The mintage here was about 43 million coins, which is significantly lower than Philadelphia's. These are scarcer, and in circulated grades they typically sell for 50 cents to a couple of dollars. In mint state, prices rise quickly. A 1940D in MS65 is usually worth $25 to $50, and gem examples with full steps on Monticello can be worth hundreds. Then there's the 1940S nickel from San Francisco. The mintage was about 39 million, making it the lowest of the 3 mints that year. While not a rare coin by general standards, it's the tougher date of 1940. Circulated examples are often found in the year $1 to $3 range, but higher mint state coins can be worth much more. In MS65, you're looking at $75 to $125, and full steps examples are scarce and highly prized by registry collectors. A 1940 SE, with full steps, can easily bring several $100s or more, depending on grade. The full steps designation is very important for Jefferson Nickels in general, and 1940 is no exception. Collectors pay big premiums for coins, where the steps of Monticello on the reverse are fully struck and show no breaks. This is because the design was notoriously difficult to strike sharply, especially at the San Francisco Mint. Another interesting aspect of 1940 nickels is the fact that they were struck in the final years before World War II. In just a few years, starting in 1942, the composition of the nickel would change to include silver, as nickel metal was needed for the war effort. So the 1940 nickels represent one of the last years of the traditional copper-nickel alloy before the wartime changes. To sum up values in simple terms, 1940 Philadelphia Common, $1 to $30 in mint state, with DDO varieties worth hundreds, 1,940D scarcer, $2 to $50 in circulated to MS65, higher with full steps, 1,940S lowest mintage, $3 to $125 in circulated to MS65, with full steps worth hundreds, 1940 DDO 001 standout variety, $200 to $500 plus in mint state. The 1940 Jefferson Nickels may not be as famous as later wartime issues or key dates, like the 1950D, but they offer collectors a fascinating mix of high mintages, challenging strike characteristics, and an extremely popular double die variety. For those building a complete Jefferson nickel set, the 1940 issues are a must-have, and for variety hunters, the 1940 DDO remains one of the most desirable coins in the entire series. The 1938S Jefferson nickel is one of the most fascinating coins in the Jefferson nickel series, not just because it was struck during the very first year of issue, but also because it comes from the San Francisco Mint, which produced far fewer coins than Philadelphia. In 1938, the U.S. Mint made the major decision to retire the long-running Buffalo nickel after 25 years of service. That design had become iconic, but by law, once a coin design had been used for 25 years, it could be changed without special approval from Congress. A competition was held to design the new nickel, and the winner was sculptor Felix Schlag, who created the portrait of Thomas Jefferson that we still see on nickels today. His design also featured Jefferson's Virginia estate Monticello on the reverse. Now the San Francisco Mint, in 1938, struck only 4,105,000 nickels with the new Jefferson design. That is an incredibly low number compared to most Jefferson nickels. To put that into perspective, modern nickels are produced in the hundreds of millions, and even other years in the early 1940s had mintages above 100 million, so with just over 4 million struck, the 1938S Jefferson nickel is one of the lowest mintage circulation strikes of the entire series. Collectors often refer to it as a semi-key date, because while it is not quite as famous as rarities, like the 1950D, it remains a challenge to find in high grades, and it always commands strong interest. Let's talk about the design details. On the obverse, Schlag's portrait of Jefferson faces left, "Within God we trust," along the left edge and liberty, with the date 1938 on the right. On the reverse, Monticello appears with the inscriptions E Pluribus Unum, United States of America, and 5 cents. Below Monticello, you can spot the mint mark S for San Francisco. Because of its low mintage, the 1938S was saved by collectors in decent numbers. Many coin dealers and collectors at the time recognized that the San Francisco issue was the scarcest of the three 1938 nickels, and so rolls and bags were put away. As a result, it's not too difficult to find nice uncirculated examples today, but truly high-end pieces with strong strikes and full steps are another matter entirely. In circulated grades, a 1938S typically sells for $3 to $6, making it affordable for most collectors. In uncirculated grades, prices rise steadily. MS63 to MS64, around $15 to $30. MS65, typically $60 to $90. MS66 jumps to the $200 to $350 range. Where things get especially exciting is with full steps examples. The San Francisco Mint was notorious during this period for producing weaker strikes compared to Denver. So sharp full steps 1938S nickels are much harder to come by. A 1938S with 5 full steps in MS66 can bring $700 to $1,000. In MS-67 full steps, prices can reach $3,000 or more, depending on eye appeal and rarity. These high-grade full steps examples are especially sought after by registry set collectors who want to build the best possible Jefferson Nickels collection. One thing that makes the 1938S especially interesting is its place in history. Being part of the very first year of Jefferson Nickels, it is always included in typesets. Collectors building year sets or mint mark sets consider the 1938S essential. And since the San Francisco Mint only struck just over 4 million coins, demand has always been strong, especially as coins with clean steps on Monticello continue to vanish into high-end collections. It's also fun to compare it directly with the other two 1938 issues. The Philadelphia issue had a mintage of over 19 million. The Denver struck just over 5 million, and the San Francisco only about 4.1 million. That makes the 1938S the lowest mintage nickel of the year, and one of the lowest mintage Jeffersons ever. To recap the values clearly: circulated fine to XF, $3, $6, S63 to MS64, $15, $30, MS65, $60, $90, FA66, $200, $350, MS66, full steps, $700, $1,000, MS67, full steps $3,000 plus. So while the 1938S Jefferson Nickel may look like just another early nickel to the casual collector, it is in fact a low mintage, first-year key issue that holds a very special place in U.S. coinage. With its San Francisco origin, low production numbers, and scarcity in top condition with full steps, the 1938S remains one of the cornerstone coins in the Jefferson Nickels series.